The Netherlands is known as the land of the windmills because it was here where mills were used most extensively and perfected. Even today, winds have a own place in the Dutch landscape. An important part of the growth and development of the Netherlands in the past was due to the many windmills the country had and still has. Around the world, many people are familiar with the Dutch vistas of wide green fields with a lonely mill spinning on the horizon. The tourist's imagination is especially sparked by the use of the polder mill in the battle against the rising waters. Large parts of the Netherlands were drained and are kept dry with these mills. At one time, more than a century ago, there were over 10,000 windmills in this relatively small country. About 950 remain today. In ancient times, man used stones to grind grain. Then, the Romans introduced a hand mill, which applied a turning motion instead of a back and forth motion. Through a hole in the turning upper handstone, the grain gets between the stones and the flour comes out of the side of the stone below. Later, man used animals for power. This allowed bigger stones to be used and more flour to be ground. This was called a horse mill. The water mill was the next step in mechanization. Again, a Roman invention. Using the running water of a creek or river, a cartwheel is set in motion. This wheel can then power several tools, such as grinding stones. Because this requires a certain velocity, the use of water mills in the Netherlands was limited to the east and southeast. There were once hundreds, now only several dozen remain. Many disused mills were lost in fires or due to poor maintenance. The first windmills appeared in the south of Europe around the year 700. The earliest mills in Western Europe around 1100. The latter were so-called post mills, boxy, wooded contraptions resting on a heavy vertical post. These mills can be completely turned. A century later, the first stone mills appeared, initially in the shape of already existing cylindrical brick towers with a turning cap and wings built on top. Later, the hull was specially mortared round and conical. Mills that only have a movable cap are called smock mills. We call moving the wings into the wind drifting. Smock mills are not always round and made of stone, but can also be made of wood, have thatched roofs, and can be hexagonal or octagonal. It's all in the name. A windmill's wings are set in motion by the wind. The miller can adjust the rotating speed by partially or completely covering the wings with canvas. The miller yields when he reduces service to maintain the mill's speed. At the end of the day, or when the sail is no longer necessary, the sail is rolled back in. In case of rapidly approaching heavy rains, it's important that the sails can be taken off the shutters swiftly, which is why a miller doesn't use knots but clamps his ropes. The oldest application in these regions is the flour mill. The released turning power of the sails is transferred to several tools and applications through a system of axes and gears. In a flour mill, the wind powers the upper of two grindstones, the runner stone. The lower one, the bedstone, is fixed, and between the stones are grooves, the furrows. This is how grain is ground. Especially in the cities, mills had to be built higher and higher to catch the wind in the advancing urban development. This way, however, the miller was unable to turn the mill from ground level, but had to use a specifically built construction, the stage. The lower floors of the stage mill were used for storage or as residence. The De Valk mill is a good example of a stage mill. Except for grinding grain, windmills were soon used for all kinds of industrial activities. This way, handcraft was replaced by machines powered by the wind. A direct consequence hereof was that much less time was needed to grind, for example, dyes for paint, seeds and nuts for oils, and for the production of paper. In the golden 17th century, everything was wind-powered. Windmills were a booming business and a fast-growing industry. In this era, windmills largely contributed to the economic growth and welfare of our nation. In 1594, Cornelis Corneliszoon of Uitgeest combined the crankshaft and the windmill to create the first sawmill, which converted the turning motion of the wings into an up and down motion of the saw frame. The sawmill enabled more ships to be built faster than in other seafaring nations, and for decades this allowed the Dutch fleet to remain dominant on the world's oceans. A unique type of mill that was crucial for the Netherlands was the polder mill. From about 1400, mills were used to keep polder land dry and even to drain entire lakes. About 1/3 of the Netherlands lies so low that it would be regularly flooded by the sea. To prevent this, the Dutch constructed a system of dikes and locks. This system is called the polder, in which the inhabitants were continuously working to drain the surface water and keep out storm surges. The deployment of polder mills was an important step forward in this process. A polder mill pumps water from a ditch to a higher canal system, a drainage canal, using a paddle wheel or Archimedean screw. If the height difference is too great, mills are built in a row, and the lowest pumps water to the in-between canal from which it's pumped further. This is a mill row. The last and highest mill deposits the water in the canal. From the drainage pool, the water runs to large rivers and then to the sea. The miller lived in the polder mill, often with a large family, and had a hard, poverty-stricken life. After all, wind and rain don't only work from 9 to 5. The Industrial Revolution and the arrival of steam engines, diesel motors and electricity meant the end of windmills. Faster and especially more reliable production methods were beating the wind. The heydays of the steam pumping stations were in the 19th century. They replaced windmills and enabled the execution of large-scale projects. From the beginning of the 20th century, thousands of mills were demolished. Thankfully, people realized in time that this would mean an important part of our cultural heritage would disappear. Societies and individuals now successfully work to preserve what remains. Take the mill de Putte in Leiden, which was demolished in the 19th century but was fully rebuilt in its original location in 1987. Nowadays, this milling job is mostly undertaken by volunteers. Hundreds of enthusiasts make sure that expertise and experience are passed on to next generations. On National Mill Day, every second weekend in May, these volunteers welcome thousands of interested people into the mills. Interested parties can also find a lot of information about mills on the useful app. Windmills in the Dutch landscape. Important witnesses of our rich heritage, our battle against the water, and, in this age, increasingly seen as modern generators of clean energy. Mills. We can't imagine the country without them.